Welcome back to Call Me By Your Game, which you know as the podcast where I, your host, Connor McCabe, normally bring on one special guest to talk about a video game from their past that is special to them and why. And we dive into what the guest loves about the game and what's fun for them, just as much as we do around the context of what was special. Today, however, we're on a very, very special episode. This is a Call Me By Your Game co-op, which normally is just part of our Patreon. It's a part of the DJ Toad tier. Normally it's behind the paywall and you only hear the preview on this feed, but it's the freaking holidays, folks. And this episode's going out to all of our feeds. So welcome those of you who haven't caught these full episodes. On these episodes, I have a panel of people on, and we do more of a deep dive into the game, talking about what we loved, and that's about it. So, ho, 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 happy holidays. Yeah, get a gift for someone you love. A little bit of housekeeping before we start. Big thank you to all of our patrons who support us. It means so much. You're part of the reason why we're doing this bonus giant episode. We normally only do the one per month. So thank you. And if you want to learn about this and all the stuff we offer, you can visit us at patreon.com/supernpcradio. You can rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. You can even check out our social media. All that will be in the show notes below. So have a ball with it. But now I will go ahead and do all of our wonderful little listeners a favor. I know you're huddled by the fire. You're eating cookies with your family, listening to this on Christmas Eve. And I'm going to introduce our guests for the episode. So first, please welcome to the mic, Genki Stan and Bodega Soup Boy, Matt Apodaca. Welcome to the show.
Wow, that's here he is. Look at God. Hello. Hi, everyone.
Are you God in this scenario?
I don't know. Definitely no.
It's kind of fun to not know, but like one of us is God on this episode, and we'll find out by the end. Also,
yes.
Welcome back.
What was we talked about Guitar Hero last time?
Yes, on like episode 3 or 4.
Yeah, and since then I've dreamed about talking about any other game, because I love Guitar Hero and stuff. But I was like, it would have been really fun to talk about Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater, for example, or Prince of Persia: Sands of Time.
Hey, you can't rewrite the past, Matthew. And it was a great episode. It was a unique early episode. I mean, you chose not a normal game, so it was great. We'll talk to you. We did, and I'm pretty sure I ruined a round for us. We're going to talk to you a lot more about what you've been up to and what you've been playing. But I do want to introduce our next guest, a first-timer to the show, but not a last-timer. I'm going to manifest that right now. Not a last-timer. Please welcome web-slinger and underground sympathizer, Will Hines. Glad to have you.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I mean, I kind of, I'm just so happy to have you here. The other two people on this podcast, they've been on.
They're old
I'm
hat.
happy they're here, but this
They're
is
old
exciting.
Hat. I'm the flavor of the month.
You
I'm
are
the new shiny toy.
Absolutely, and you will. We haven't talked video games before,
No.
but I know that you're a big Spider-Man fan and you
Huge.
adored the first game.
Yes.
And I saw on my little friend feed that you were playing this. So voila, here you are.
Yeah, I just finished my my new game plus playthrough. I finished it yesterday.
Wow, just in
I've gone
time.
through it twice. Yeah.
You can stick to a deadline, can't you?
I mean, I'm good at putting off anything that involves real feelings or people.
Cool.
So yes, I have finished 2 playthroughs of this video game. Also, Connor, you and I have not talked video games, but I have talked video games with the other guests on this show. So the circle is now complete now that you and I will be talking video games.
Perfect. I love it. We'll also talk to you a little more about what you've been enjoying and just learn a little more about you because you haven't had the chance to share about
whatever
yourself.
you want to know.
Oh, fantastic. Speaking of open books, I'll welcome our final guest for the episode, and that's Star Science student and Just the Facts fanboy, Edgar Momplaisir. Welcome back.
I appreciate you for having me on, Connor. This is a big opportunity, you know what I'm saying? As a big fan of the podcast, I've been listening to since episode 1, and I stopped soon after, but I'm a huge fan of the pod.
It's great to have you back, although I felt like it was a little conflicting what you just shared. But I'm just going to take the positive out of that and say thank you very much. It's great to have you back, and I can't wait to even have more of a fun time than we had together during the Jack and Daxter episode.
Oh, look, let's be honest. It was a dud. It was a dud of an episode because, look, it's nobody's fault. Jack and Daxter was a very bad game. Like Matt, I wish I would have picked a game that was more honest to, like maybe a Grand Theft Auto 4.
Jack 2.
Or even Jack 2 would probably have been better. Jack and Daxter was such a dud of a game, and I saw it in Connor's eyes when about 3 minutes in, he was just like, this isn't going well. And I'm upset, and I just wasted this. And this is the second episode of the podcast, and this idiot is blowing it. He also got super high with the producer beforehand, so he's incredibly low energy. I hate this.
It's so weird because I remember it's so different than that. Well, so different, but
that's because you're a suburban white mom inside of a man's body,
which I think is something we touched on the last episode. Nice callback. That was fantastic. I honestly remember loving that episode, and I remember hearing. One of the cool things you were sharing about was how you and Jonathan would like make your own movies. Like you would just play the game, but create your own stories. And it's like, look at you now, Mr. Television author.
That's what they call it.
Yeah. There's writer and then there's the author.
That contractually, yes. Like in my legal contracts, it is called authorship. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. I've only done guest authoring. I'm trying to get a co-author. That's an LA joke for everyone.
Hey, I'll settle for author's assistant right now. I'm trying to get my way in.
Oh, fantastic. Well, it's so good to have all of you here. Obviously, two of you returning. Will, this is your first time. And Will, I want to talk to you first a little bit. Okay. I know you, and these two fellas know you through the Los Angeles improv community.
Yes.
You were a New York hero first, and then you came out here. You're one of those who not only survived but thrived out here.
Thank you.
But what do you want to share about yourself? How might people know you? What do you want people to, and what do you want people to know?
For this podcast, what I want you to know is that I only started playing video games 2 years ago. Really hadn't played really at all before, except for like way back in the day, early like text adventure, sort of Monkey Island kind of stuff. Cool. And then like took a long break. And then when the Spider-Man game came out, the PS4 Spider-Man game, I bought a system just to play that game, got obsessed, and have since played a fairly high number of games. I've actually gotten totally into it and played a lot of really great sort of prestige, well-regarded games and had a good time. So I'm kind of both new to it, but I've also covered a lot of ground in 2 years.
Nice. It kind of reminds me of how I grew up a very straight-laced kid, as I'm sure you could have guessed. And
yes, I didn't. Not a surprise.
And nor would have expected you to be. So I didn't drink until today, and this White Claw has really got me going, y'all. But I didn't drink until I was 21 in college. Well, obviously that's when I turned 21. But as soon as that happened, it was like, I drink all the time after that. It kind of sounds like a similar thing, and probably had hopefully a different impact on your life.
Mine hasn't yet. I mean, what you sounded like you just described was the beginning of a sad period. I don't.
It was pretty. Mixed bag. I'll say.
Yeah, up and down. I've had a real positive experience playing video games. I have gotten addicted to a couple where I've had to like back up off it, like, get some space.
Wow. Okay.
Like force myself to put the controller down. And I've had a couple of all night sessions where the sun has greeted me and I've been like,
oh my gosh.
I blew it.
You've really made up for lost time, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Way to go. That is awesome. What are some of the games? Like, I know because I've listened to you I heard you on Reactivators, which was really great. Actually, all three of you are Reactivators alumni.
That's right.
So congratulations, all three great episodes.
Connor, have you been on?
No, that's funny. I haven't been on
that hurts.
Reactivators. I
know why.
Yeah, because you guys talked about me too much on your episode, you have to. I don't get my own.
Yeah, we just talked about you and said,
guest appearance.
Don't have him on because I'm talking about him now.
Perfect. That's a 2-for-1 the people need.
You've reached your Connor cap, babe.
I think this show has reached its Connor cap in like minute 2 in the first episode. But what are some games that you've really enjoyed, maybe besides Spider-Man?
Yeah, many games. I've played God of War, the 2018, the most recent version.
Oh, nice.
Last of Us and Last of Us Part 2 were both like fascinating experiences. The Uncharted series, all 4 of them. So I did a big Naughty Dog run there.
Yeah, you did, you naughty dog.
I'm a naughty dog, yeah. The Witness, which is like a puzzle solving thing where you're on an island and it's just kind of cerebral and abstract and strange. There's one called The Return of the Obra Dinn.
Yes.
That I play. Oh, we did Horizon Zero Dawn. What's that?
We did an episode on Return of the Obra Dinn with Teo Yang over the summer.
Yeah. It's a pretty short and compelling and very cool game. I did it after Last of Us 1 because I needed just sort of an emotional break.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
And I hadn't even played Last of Us 2, which has permanently ruined me in terms of emotional impact. Horizon Zero Dawn I really loved.
Awesome.
And there was one more. Oh, Red Dead Redemption 2 I just 100%ed yesterday, which almost killed me.
That is like such a astonishing achievement. Like, because that's
and
not
a flex.
Like, yeah, it's absolutely a flex. Because I can't remember the last time I've 100%ed a video game. Like Oh
really? I try to do it to all. I 100%ed God of War, Spider-Man. I 100%ed 7 times. I just 100%ed Miles Morales, which those aren't too bad. Like those are not like so big.
I guess the difference.
Last of Us, I 100%ed. Last of Us Part 2, I did not because I had to get out. It was too bleak.
Done.
But I wonder. Go for it, Matt.
No, I was gonna say I think I've just been like playing games like my whole life, so I'm always just moving on to the next game. Like I'm always like, okay, I finished the main story. I'm done. I'm sort of done with this for now. I mean, I guess I've 100%ed like Pokemon. Like I've filled a Pokedex before. Like I've done that at least once. But I don't think I've ever like, the idea of 100%ing Red Dead Redemption 2 is like, that means
I really enjoyed the game, so I just wanted to spend more time in it.
Yeah.
It was more about that. And there are some games, it really depends on how much of a reach it is to do. 100%ing the Spider-Man games is actually not so crazy if you finish the main story. You mostly just have to get all the collections.
But them pigeons, man, them goddamn pigeons. That's the only thing I have left in the first one, and I haven't completed it.
I'll come over to your house and I'll do it. I love catching pigeons.
All right, I'll come through, man. I'll risk the COVID for that.
Wow, that is quite the...
and I played all 3 Arkham Batman games, and I did not 100% those because that was a big undertaking. But I enjoyed those games a lot.
Wow.
I think I covered a ton of ground in 2 years.
Yes, you have.
Did. Absolutely.
My God, you've played enough video games for some lifetimes, for some people's lifetimes.
I mean, I think it might be a problem.
Well, hey, we're here to only enable that problem, Will Hines. You're in the right place if you don't want to deal with that, then this is the place for you.
All right.
That sounds really fun. Are you you said you finished your playthrough of your second 100% of Miles Morales yesterday. Do you know what you're going to play next? Or
I think I'm going to do Ghost of...
oh, yes.
How do you say
Tsushima.
it? Yes, Tsushima. I think I'm going to do that.
That's what I'm playing right now. And it's fantastic. If you like those other games, you're going to love this one.
Yeah. I might take a break and do like a smaller one first.
Cool.
Kind of, something like Return of the Obra Dinn, like a small, like little detour. I might do a little palate cleanser and then dive into Ghost.
Have you played, and I don't know if this is on PlayStation 4, but Untitled Goose Game?
No.
That might be a fun, different one to break up those style of games too. It's a silly game where you play this goose and you steal stuff. You're a rambunctious goose and you steal stuff from townspeople.
Sounds fun.
You might like that. You might. Oh well, I don't know if Undertale is on PS4, but that's like a fun small little game. You've played Inside.
Yes,
I think. Yeah, I love that.
I did that on the iPhone. That was an insane experience.
Yeah, what a way in, because as like an intro to games.
Yeah.
But now that I know that you're looking for like a small game, I'm gonna scratch my brain and I'm gonna text you, Will.
But we have to not be sure if it's on PS4 though.
I can't be sure yet, but that's the thing. I'll be able to sort of take the time, think about a better list, and know if it's on PS4 before I recommend it to you.
You know, another game I heard of that I might want to try is What Remains of Edith Finch. I heard a lot of good things about that game. Have you guys heard of that one?
Just a little bit, but I've only heard that it's really great. That's all I've heard.
I mean, we'll offline about this, Will, because I have something in mind for something else.
Right.
Well, I guess we won't know about it, Edgar, whatever he's talking about. Though that's fantastic, Will. I also just want to welcome you into the video game family. It's really great to have you.
Thank you.
You've been pulling your weight since you've been here, and don't go anywhere, kid. We really like you.
Okay.
Perfect. Speaking of kids, someone who is literally acting as a father in this very moment, Edgar Momplaisir. How have you been since we recorded last? We've had quite the 12 months, but what have you been up to lately? What have you been playing? And what's going on in your life?
I guess I'm all right. I mean, can't really complain. I'm alive. I've been playing a lot of NBA 2Ks. I think like that's like the game that I stick to the most. Definitely played
upgrade?
last. Yeah,
to the
I always
PS5
upgrade.
version?
I've always upgraded since the year 2009 2005 when my father got me the game because I wanted NBA Live, and he said, well, this was cheaper at Costco. Like, I think people forget that NBA Live was the superior game for most of the 2000s.
Yeah, that's what I played. I played the one with Vince Carter on the cover.
That's
and
right.
then I think Jason Kidd was on the cover of another one that I played for NBA Live.
I would go to my cousins' houses to play those because my parents would only buy me the 2K games because they were constantly $19.99. And then at some point in college, maybe later after college, 2K for some reason just beat out NBA Lives to the point that they don't make NBA Lives anymore. They only make 2Ks now.
More like NBA Dead, am I right?
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Yes.
So... Last of Us 2. I played the Spider-Man, played that Red Dead. I grew up an Xbox guy, especially in college. I was a huge Xbox guy. But then somewhere along the line, I just got my hands on a PlayStation 4 and I've never looked back.
Nice. That's fantastic. Nice. Also very sneaky good long-term decision to get on that 2K track. It's almost like you were with that person before they got hot, and then all of a sudden they're hot and like they're with you. So very way to play your cards right there.
Yeah, I've never had that experience, but I am sure it's pretty great. I really do like the 2K series. I mean, I think now I have some complaints about how, I mean, it's happening to every game, right? I also play Call of Duty, which is the same thing, which instead of making these fun multiplayer worlds, they're more interested in finding these ways to nickel and dime you in every single way. So, sometimes Call of Duty and 2K can get frustrating because you're getting dunked on by this kid, but you're just like, well, this kid spent a ton of money on their My Player character to make sure they're like the most souped up. And it's the same thing in COD where I'm like, why is that gun so much faster? Oh, because they bought like these like very rare blueprints and stuff like that. I mean, maybe I also suck, but it's just,
Yeah.
It's where games are heading. It's where games are headed.
Absolutely. And I do want to say you might suck. I don't know. But to be fair, this is something you're not the only person I've heard this from. In fact, I've heard this echoed a lot, that people have these very specific issues with these games. And I think there's absolutely something to that. I think this is probably its own discussion, but even from the sense of like wanting to hop into a multiplayer game like that and just be on a level playing field with and then your skills make up for whatever deficit there might be, that's what you want. But at least for me, so that's where I would at least come from in understanding that. No,
I completely agree. I think that's why these story games end up being so hot is because that is pure skill, right? Like you're playing against the CPU, and it's like, it's why I fell in love with the Uncharted series when I got on PlayStation, or why I love both Spider-Man games or both Last of Us. It's just, I'm not being cheated by someone who's spending more money than me. If I'm working hard and I'm figuring out these puzzles and I'm, just doing my best, I will succeed. But that isn't always the case in a Call of Duty game at 2 a.m.
Yes, totally understand that. Last question I have for you before we talk to Matthew about what he's been up to and been playing. Do you have something that you're looking forward to playing or that you've heard of and you're like, I'm interested in trying this game out?
It's not any specific game. I was able to get my hands on a PlayStation 5, which was its own very insane ordeal.
Wow. Belated congrats, by the way.
Thank you
Nice
so
flex.
much. You were there the day I got it.
I was.
You heard me scream and you went, "What's wrong?" And I said, "I just got a fucking PlayStation 5."
That's true.
But yeah, I think for me, I'm just waiting for that PlayStation 5 game. I hate to be that person, but I kind of feel like, I got this console and there's not really a game for it that's impressive, especially because I finished Miles Morales on the PlayStation 4. Mm-hmm. So I didn't play that on the PlayStation 5, but I'm waiting for that PlayStation 5 game.
Totally.
That's just like, this is what next gen consoles can do.
Yeah.
I don't think that game exists yet. It's definitely not Cyberpunk, I'll tell you that.
Yeah. Have you been playing that?
No, I've just watched people like Matt and Cody play it, and Matt and Zig play it, and it's just not a great game from what I'm seeing.
Yeah, I'm sure Matt, you can cue us into that a little bit, but that's pretty much what I've heard too. Is that many things about it. That's its own spiraling hole to talk about. But cool, and thank you so much for sharing. But now, Matthew, you're in the batter's box, buddy. How have you been? What do you want people to know? Anything you've been up to, and what have you been playing?
As far as what I've been up to, everyone can just simply mind their own business. But as far as games go, I feel like there was a certain point, like in quarantine, where I was like, I love playing video games, but right now I'm not having fun playing them. And part of that is a symptom of working on the show that I work on, how this get played, which is good. Like, we're just always playing dog shit. And so like when I have to play something bad for so long, I hate doing that. But then to play something good still sort of feels like work, because I'm like, okay, well, I've been doing this. And now it's like, it doesn't feel like a different experience. But there was a point in quarantine where then that sort of flipped, and I thought games were really good again. And my love of games is sort of at an all-time high right now, which is,
you are glowing, I must say.
Thank you. And it's because, like, I don't know, I think I've just been, like, I've been recently on a tear of finishing games, which is also something I don't normally do. Like, I've been known to, like, my backlog is huge. And I have I've been known to like start a game and like get halfway through it, start playing a different game, and then just completely like forget about the other game.
You're reading from my diary right now.
Yeah.
And yes, I write about video games in my diary.
Like just as an example, I recently finished Death Stranding, God of War 2018, and Miles Morales, like all within like 2 weeks of each other. Like I just like knocked all of them out.
Dang.
And like not 100%, just like finished the main stuff.
Yeah.
Still.
And so right now I'm playing Hades, which is just, I think there is a it could be game of the year. Like The Last of Us Part 2 is sweeping like all these like game awards like categories and stuff, but like Hades is one of the best made games of the year. Like just it's so fun. It's like
not on PS4, sorry, Will.
Yeah, I'm so sorry, Will. But it is like, it's fun from the second you start it, and like it doesn't. Basically, the basic premise of the game though is you're trying to escape hell. You're fighting like monsters and like other gods down there and stuff. And anytime you die, you go straight back to the beginning and have to go through it again. And you get different like abilities and stuff along the way. And so that makes it interesting because each play is different. You're not doing the same thing each time. So it's endlessly fun. I love it. But so I've been playing that a lot right now. I am playing Ghost of Tsushima, which I also am just like really, really loving. I'm playing Gears 5 on Xbox, which I've never owned an Xbox before, but when the Series S and X were coming out, I already had the PS5 pre-ordered, but it wasn't coming, and so I was like, okay, well, like I want to play new games now, and I was able to get a Series S on the day that it came out, and I went and picked it up, and that is like such a neat thing because I have not purchased an Xbox game because you don't really need to with Game Pass. They have this thing where you can just like they have their library up there. It's not every single game, but they have a pretty dense library of games where you can just download them to your thing for free and just pay like a monthly subscription for it. And that is like, it's perfect. I love that.
Wow.
So I'm playing Gears 5 on that right now. Really, really loving that. And I'm also, I am playing Cyberpunk. And it is very much like, I don't love first person shooters. I'll say that. But this is like, I don't know, something about it has me really like locked in. And despite the buggy issues that it has, and despite the fact that it crashes every single time I play it. Like,
it's called depression, Matt. It's called depression. That's what has you locked in and like in this game. It's called depression.
There's even stuff in the game that I think is stupid and bad. But because you can get street cred. You're a criminal, but you can get street cred by helping the police, and that just doesn't make like logical sense. Like, you shouldn't be able to help the police, and that makes you a cooler criminal. Like that, like, no. But I'm just like, the world is so like something's always happening. So I'm just always just like sometimes walking around, not even driving. And I feel like the things that work in it work really well. It's not like the most inventive game. And it's definitely not like it's not the game of the console generation that they were making it seem like. To me, that's The Last of Us 2. I think The Last of Us 2 is perfection. Like, everything about it works perfectly. But I'm having a great time with Cyberpunk, and it's not available for PS5 yet. It is the PS4 version, which doesn't work on a base PS4 apparently. Yeah. So it's running fine for the most part, despite, it does crash every single time I play it. But when the patch comes, oh baby, I hope it runs twice as good. Yeah.
I feel like from what I've heard, it seems like they're going to be fixing this thing for a while because there's just so much about it that either crashes or doesn't function, or I've heard people have all of a sudden, I was actually watching Jake Sprague stream it today. It was the first time I'd seen anything. And he suddenly got in an interaction with a group of people, and it was clearly a story like point in some mission. I don't know if it's a main mission or a side mission, but he had there was clearly steps missing that he hadn't even started yet, but the game just suddenly threw him into this in the middle of a story mission, but he actually hadn't initiated it.
Wow, interesting.
And it wasn't like, oh, it's just cool and spontaneous. No, it was clearly like, oh,
he's not supposed to be there.
This game expects me to know what these people are talking about, and I don't. Yeah. So I hope that too. I haven't started that or purchased it. I'll probably be down the road if I play it.
Down the road.
Yeah, but it's such a weird thing too, because I was not even really like hyped on it until like maybe like 2 days before it came out, and I didn't even know why. I think I saw that like the physical edition came with little things, and I was like, oh, like I want the little things that it comes with, and I was like, I don't even know what they are. It was just like stickers.
Yeah, I saw some people got what looked like those little figures you put in water and they grow.
Yeah.
Have you seen those?
I would have loved that.
Yeah. But hey, here we are. Well, thank you. Thank you as well, Matt, for sharing.
Thank you, Connor.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we get into our whole discussion today on Spider-Man Miles Morales, which I do this every time. I forget to actually introduce the topic, so that may have been the first time, 29 minutes in, but it's in the show title. People know. Want to do a rapid fire, spontaneous thing I just thought about, and I want to hear from all three of you your favorite like holiday dessert, if you have one. Because it's a holiday season. This episode's coming out December 23rd, 2 days before Xmas. So why don't we start with you, Will? Do you have a favorite holiday dessert? And if not,
maybe seem trashy, but my family on Christmas Day would get a box of glazed donuts, and we weren't like,
I love that.
That wasn't like a regular thing. It was just like, for some reason, Christmas morning, Dad would go out, come back with a whole box of donuts, and we would chow on them.
That's my favorite
I
answer.
associate that with Christmas.
That is fantastic. Do you? Where did you grow up? Are you from New York?
I'm from Connecticut.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so although my dad and mom were actually from Cleveland, Ohio. That's where I was born, and as this tradition started there was like a good donut shop near our place, but we kept it up when we moved to New England.
Oh, cool. That's
I'm a Connecticut boy. If you're asking, if you just want to get to know me, Connor, I consider myself a Connecticut boy.
I did actually want to host this episode. I brought them along to be like, conversation lubricant almost, but then you and I are really going to get to know each other even better. So thank you.
Where'd you grow up, Connor?
I'm from Northern California, from Modesto.
Of course. Yeah. It is no surprise.
Got Modesto written
Water
all
wealth,
over me.
What is that
Contentment
bridge?
Health.
Yeah.
How do you know that?
I've been in Modesto, and I saw that bridge, and it was just like,
that's so funny.
Crazy.
Yeah.
George Lucas stuff everywhere, and that bridge that says water, wealth, contentment, health over it. I'm like, man, it's like I'm walking through a quarter.
It's very, basically, it is a very strange place, and always strange, like, knowing that, like, George Lucas did grow up there. It was, like, a big deal, and my high school, I went to the same high school he did, which is what he based on the main high school in American Graffiti. Blah, 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 blah. So it's hard to escape if you're from there. But
and you guys, your sports team is called the Yodas now, right? Like that's the name of your football team mascot and stuff like that?
Yeah, we have our own football team, and they're the Modesto Yodas. Which have been changed to Grogu. But
the JV team.
The JV team, exactly. Edgar, what about you? Do you have a favorite holiday dessert?
Well, first I want to bring up that I've been trying to share my screen and you have disabled share screening because I would like to show on a map where Modesto, California is located, and I have a problem with you calling it Northern California. But I don't have a favorite Christmas dessert. I did not grow up celebrating Christmas, which is something I've talked about a lot. But something that we would do on Christmas is marathon movies, and at the end, whoever won could split a Martinelli sparkling cider with whoever they chose to wake up.
Whoever stayed up the longest.
That's right. So that is my favorite, I guess, is a nice
pretty fun.
Martinelli sparkling cider. Yeah, my brother and I would win all the time and just wake up the other person.
That's really sweet. And very adorable too. You and Jonathan?
That's correct. But we no longer do that because we don't like each other anymore. So, the holiday overall for me is kind of but
yeah,
Martinelli's sparkling cider, my friends, so fucking good.
Very, very good. As a kid especially, it was like very much the fanciest thing you could ever sip.
Absolutely, because you'd see adults drinking champagne, even though for me, they were also drinking Martinelli's because I grew up very religious, but it always felt very like, ooh, let's toast this Martinelli's.
Quite regal.
But yeah, Modesto, again, not Northern California.
It's the Central Valley for sure, but, it's far more north than here. It's more north than it is south. Let's just say that.
Yeah, that's fair. But,
Well, that sounds delicious. I'm going to incorporate that if I ever live with another person in my life. Matt Apodaca, holiday favorite dessert. Do you have one?
Well, it's tough because I don't know if I my favorite sweet treat is ice cream. Okay, I'm an ice cream freak, but I don't say that I'm having ice cream on Christmas. My grandpa just started making. My grandpa makes tamales every year.
Wow.
And so, it's the best. It's my favorite thing. But he just started making the sweet ones. So like that has been like a very interesting thing for him because he's the type, he's like, he claims to have invented it, which is not true because it's like a thing that has existed for a long, long time. But he thinks that because absolutely. Because he started doing it, it is now a thing. But he made them really, really good. So I would say that, or we don't do like, it's tough, because I don't have like a dessert one, but we do have this tradition where we eat like a big breakfast. It is like around the tamales. That's the thing I look forward to every year.
Delicious.
It's like tamales and then just straight up like eggs and bacon, like guacamole, like that's it, and orange juice and like coffee. But it's great. It's my favorite breakfast.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
For me, there's a lot of desserts I've loved over the years, but a recent thing that my sister does for every Christmas morning is she makes this, it's not necessarily a breakfast tart, but it is a tart dish, and it's so good. It's usually like raspberry or something sweet like that. If you think I would know exactly what it was if I was going to talk about it on the show.
Yeah, this guy loves it. He doesn't even know what it's freaking called.
Yeah, nice flaky top. It's really good.
Are you talking about a pie, my man?
I am. Well, thank you all for sharing, and thank you for indulging me for that long opener. It's always fun to catch up and talk about all that stuff, but we're going to finally get into it. And when we begin this talk about Spider-Man Miles Morales, I'm going to start with a little history and context around this game. This is sort of just like a pretty basic vanilla intro, just in case the guest might not know about it or wants a little extra fine detail. But so here this is, and if anyone wants to interrupt, feel free, and then we'll get into our personal feelings about the game. So I'll go ahead and kick us off. Spider-Man Miles Morales is the second in the Marvel Spider-Man series for PlayStation consoles and acts as a spin-off from the original game. This time, the player follows Miles Morales, not just the other Spider-Man, after Peter Parker departs for a vacation to Europe, leaving him in charge of watching over New York City during the holiday season. Miles grapples with believing he is good enough to be Spidey, looks out for his friends and family, and uncovers a mystery around a new criminal group called the Underground, while also fighting the energy edgelords Roxxon. This game was this was a launch game for the PS5, but also, as we'll hear, a couple of our guests played it on the PS4. It was released on the same day, November 12th, 2020, and it was released to considerable praise and admiration, but was also criticized for not being a fully fleshed out journey like the first game, which I think is totally fair. It depends on your taste, but I think that's absolutely fair. This installment also introduced new Venom abilities from Miles that Peter didn't have, and significantly improved graphics and performance. And lastly, it was also revered for the acting performances, story, and relationships built along the way by the characters. As far as any important history and context, also, this was made by Insomniac, who did Jak and Daxter. So we've got a little lineage there for Edgar, but anything else you guys want to share about the history about the game itself?
Not necessarily about the history, but I mean, I guess I just want to get into it.
Perfect. Kick us off, buddy.
Because the criticism of it being too short is something that I think you and I have talked about.
Definitely,
we texted about this because I was, obviously the other Spider-Man game is much longer. There's a lot more things going on in it, but I was so refreshed to not have to play a 40-hour game, just to kind of play this over a couple days over a weekend and kind of knock it out. Because I don't know, there's a lot. Some games are far too long and overstay their welcome. But this was I felt like the story in this one was so intimate and just sort of it benefited from being shorter, a shorter experience. I
disagree, Matt. I mean, and I love the game. I think that it's a pretty great game. It's probably one of my favorite games of the year, only, probably being beat out by Last of Us 2. But for me, it kind of felt like, Black History Month of like, oh, okay, this game about a black character is by far shorter and by far has less things. And the only really cool moments are this very weird Black Lives Matter moment with a deaf person. Sure. I mean, like, that's cool. Like, it just felt like they kind of just cheated themselves out of, I mean, we all know what rushed it. Connor said it. They wanted it to launch with the PlayStation 5. Like, that was very, very clear. We're talking about cyberpunk bugs. There were a ton of bugs in this game. Like, for example, there were certain cutscenes that you could only hear Miles's audio and you couldn't hear Genki's audio or something like that. Sometimes you would be webbing and then all of a sudden you'd be going through something, or a trash can would be moving for some reason. Like, it was
that's
clear
just
that
a new feature, dude. Trash cans.
You're such an optimist.
It just felt to me that this game was very, very clearly rushed. And looking at it from a perspective, Matt, you as a Latinx person, me as a black person, I was just like, man, give this game its depth. Give this game its full fucking thing. Like, I don't know. Maybe I'm just being a pessimist. I don't know if you felt similarly, Will, but
I wanted it to be a little bit, I want to say I enjoyed it being shorter, because if they were going to do a fully fleshed out Miles game, then I want it like radically different. Like this was basically a DLC plus with a new character at the center, and a pretty good one. There were lots of like bugs and stuff, but none of them glitched in a way that really interfered with my enjoyment. Like the pacing was good. The acting was good. The relationships were good. So I was very immersed. Yeah, occasionally it would just be Miles Morales' head walking around and his body would vanish, and that would be weird.
Dude, I wish I had that on my version.
There wasn't too much of that. And like, the skeleton of the game was really, I thought, developed. Like emotionally, it was they kicked the tires, I think, pretty well.
Yeah.
But if it still was very clearly leveraging the infrastructure they built on the PS4 game. I mean, it basically like they didn't reinvent the wheel. They just kind of like polished the wheel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a better wheel.
It's a better wheel. Like the fights were better. The web swinging was better, but it was still basically the same. They just kind of kicked it up a notch, and they just had more time to polish those things. And there was like, some of the mechanics were thought through a little bit better, but it was like, it was a reform, not a revolution of the original game. And so it's like, I don't know, if they're going to give Miles his day in the sun, they would need to like, I don't even know, like rebuild everything from the ground up. Because that's kind of been the problem with Miles Morales's. You know what I was going to say? The weird thing about this was it came out so soon after Spider-Verse came out. Like, my impression of Miles Morales is like, he's in the best Spider-Man movie that's been made, which is Spider-Verse.
Yes.
And so Spider-Verse dominates the Spider-Man movies in my mind way more in an unfair way than this video game ever could. It suffers by comparison not to the PS4 game, but to the Spider-Verse movie.
And our expectations of Miles Morales, like you just said, like I think that's like so well put, of like that movie for me was this emotional moment of having all these superhero movies that are constantly white and all that stuff. And like even Black Panther didn't really do it for me. I mean, that's a whole nother thing, but like I like wept watching Spider-Verse and it was just like, I feel so seen.
I've cried watching that movie. It's great.
Absolutely. I felt so seen. I mean, like, of this like New York black kid who doesn't tie his shoes and like wants to be his superhero. I was like, fuck, I feel so seen in this. And then playing this Miles Morales game, I remember Steven Sano came over to pick something up and was like watching me play and went, is this the first one? And I was like, no, it's the second one. And he's like, are you sure? Like that, like, because it felt like you said, like it just felt so similar. And it felt like being so similar to take certain things away. Like I missed the sequencing puzzles, or like, you know, like little stuff like turning on all those radio towers. Even though they were like small things, I missed those little pieces, those little puzzles of the game.
Yeah, I think all of this in its own way is super valid. I think I actually had some time to think about it, Matt, because I still feel like for when this game came out and what I was looking to do, which for me was to finish a handful of games before the year ended.
Yeah.
I was very happy that it, even doing literally everything, took only 18 hours. So it was refreshing in that sense that it was like timed perfectly. But I think that, like a few of you have said, that if we're going to give Miles his day in the sun, not only would I hope that the next game that hopefully he stars in is a fully fleshed out adventure like that first Spider-Man, but that it would, be like reinvent that wheel, as you were saying, instead of just reforming it and repolishing it.
I mean, my shorthand thing is for polishing the wheel. I actually think they did great. Like, I think the wheel was polished, improved. I like the mechanics a lot better. I love the fights much more in this game.
Yeah, can we talk about that?
Up. But, so I guess if they reduced the scale of their ambitions, and within that scale, I thought they did really well.
Totally.
And it's just sort of like, I kind of maybe just wanted a game that they weren't trying to make. But for the game they were trying to make, I don't know, I loved it. I played it twice and it's a blast.
Yeah.
The fights were, I really love it makes the old fights, the fights in PS4 seem clunky and kind of very repetitive. And I could be a lot more creative with the fights in this one. And it was really fun.
Yeah. I want to dive into those because that's something that I was feeling, but I didn't understand what I was feeling until a little later. And I want to talk about why we feel like the fights are better, because I think that's something I've heard echoed. For me, a lot of it had to do, one of the aspects was the Venom abilities,
right?
Which is a special that Peter doesn't have, that this is Miles' ability, and it's a whole skill tree you can upgrade. But I found myself using that Venom stuff all the time in these battles.
Yeah.
Saving my butt often.
My whole fighting strategy was built around Venom stuff.
Yeah.
Miles is like way more powerful than Peter Parker.
I was going to say, I don't want this to just be like, I don't know. I think he's such a better Spider-Man in like every way. He's like a cooler Spider-Man. He's got better powers. And like, I don't know. I think
he's even more sincere somehow.
Yes, and that's the thing. I think he's like, because he actually grapples with, hey, I don't actually know if I can do this. And I think that's a little more compelling than, I guess I'm Spider-Man. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I guess I better do something about this. He is very like, okay, like, is this something I should do? Can I do this? And I don't know. I love that. But like, I do think something about just because there is a villain named Venom, we got to call these powers something else. That's going to get confusing.
And it's
when
electricity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Will, if you don't mind, and if this is too abstract of a request, refuse it if you need.
Okay.
But walk me through like a fight you might be getting in that game, sort of what your strategy and approach is. I know that they can be very, very different, but are there things you're looking to do or abilities you're looking to utilize?
Yes. I look to do 50% stealth and then 50% wipe the floor with them with Venom.
Cool.
So it's like, because it's camouflage ability, turning invisible, so I like to pick off like 50% of the people before they know it. Fast. Mm-hmm. Just like turn invisible, space, get this guy, go back up, recharge, come back down. Then I get bored, I come in, I get that Venom going, and it's all just about punch 6 times to power the Venom, and then use one of the 4 big Venom abilities, the smash, the jump, the dash, or the punch.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Right? Punch, smash, dash, and jump. Yeah. And it's just like, none of them had a chance. Like, it's insane to me that any of the NPCs stay in the fight after they see me electrocute.
It is such a funny video game logic thing because like they're all seeing the same thing,
they're
but
so
they're all
aggressive
also
and
thinking,
talking trash.
I can fucking take down this
Spider-Man
Spider-Man.
NPCs are the funniest characters I've ever encountered in any media. They are hilarious to me.
Especially the prisoners that were escaping the vault. I'm just like, got at least the underground dudes and the Roxxon dudes, like they got these special weapons and stuff.
Yeah.
You're just a dude. Like, I'm gonna
and
fuck
you have
you
a
up.
shock collar on your neck still.
I'm gonna fuck you up. Touch that feast truck again. See what the fuck happens. See what the fuck happens if you touch that feast truck again.
I just found myself my goal was to kind of never stop the flow. Like I just want to go from guy to guy to guy and not be interrupted. I mean, the flow in the first game was good too. I mean, totally. I really loved traversal and entering into a battle in these Spider-Man games. The transition is so good to be like just swinging high over the skyscrapers and then just swan dive into a battle. And right away I can just like start picking them off. It is incredibly satisfying. I mean, it was like, I never got tired of it.
It has that same satisfaction to me that like playing like a Tony Hawk game does, where like you're just doing just like because the mode of traversal in this game is so fun. And so like just the act of swinging, like you were saying, and then transitioning from a swing into a fight and not having to like wait for a loading screen or anything like that, or just like having to switch like the type of game that you're playing is so cool. That's a great, I love that.
I take pleasure in interrupting, like you'll be swinging around and a J. Jonah Jameson podcast will start, or a Dana cast, you know, the competing podcast who is good starts. Yeah. I never wanted them to finish. I'm like, I'm getting to my next thing before they finish. Like as a game, I'd be like, I'm going to be interrupting J. Jonah Jameson by like pummeling some dude. Because you can just move around the city so fast. I mean, it's truly a joy.
When I fight, my strategy would be to stealth take out the biggest guys first. I would always go to them because they can sort of like disrupt the flow, as it were.
Oh yeah,
they're good at blocking, and they're if they hit you,
they land a punch, they can do serious damage.
Totally.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I always go to them first, and then the other guys start getting real freaking scared, but don't leave.
Yes. Something that I think I knew about the first one, but had forgotten, was when I would be in like a rooftop scuffle, as they're called. My favorite thing would be to jump swing and kick somebody off a building. But then I was like, holy shit, I am being incredibly violent and murdering people. And then one point I like was doing something else at the bottom of that building after the battle, and I looked up and there was like 6 dudes that were just webbed to the building. I was like, oh, they send out something to make
it so
you can't kill nobody. You can't kill nobody.
Spider-Man's not killing anybody, but it sure heck looks like you do. I mean, you like jump kick a dude off a building far.
The NPCs at the very least have what they think are the last thoughts they'll have.
Yes.
Before being safely clung to a building.
Yes.
Some of my favorite Spider-Man chatter in the DLCs for the first game, that Hammerhead DLC, which is the city that never sleeps. The NPCs in Hammerhead's gang have the funniest chatter, one of which is when you burst into a Hammerhead base, sometimes the first thing they say is, "Oh no," which is like so funny to hear, which is also so smart and accurate. It's like, yeah, your day is ruined.
Yeah.
I am here to beat up 100 of you.
If you were bad and you saw Spider-Man coming, you would have to be like, oh, God damn it.
Yes.
Today's the day.
Jeez. Speaking of those battles, this is just something I've noticed for myself, and it might just be because my brain can only operate at a certain capacity, but I've noticed the same thing in Ghost of Tsushima, is that as much as I feel very comfortable and I can stay in a rhythm and really do damage and not ever really be in danger, I'm sure I died in Miles a couple times, but for the most part I feel very in control. I have still not gotten to the point where I am utilizing my entire skill set for what it is. For whatever reason, like I was noticing in Ghost of Tsushima that I never use those like kunais, Matt, those little daggers you throw, or the other things. And then I was like, there's a whole skill set I'm not utilizing. The same thing would happen in Miles. Did you all feel this, or Will, you're probably a well-oiled machine at this point, second nature, but
a well-oiled machine.
Yeah.
I definitely felt that, and it would have to be the little objective challenges when you were fighting certain people that would remind me. Like, for example, I didn't start swing kicking until the end of the game. I was just like, oh yeah, you can do that. Like
totally.
And I think for me, it's because I get set on one certain kind of way of playing. I'm like that in a lot of my games. Like I use the same gun every match of Call of Duty, or like, you know what I mean? I play with nets every game on 2K. Like, so like I have to like follow those objectives and be like, oh yeah, I can web somebody to, especially like brutes. Like, you know, I'll just be like trying to like punch out brutes with venom, but it's just like, oh wait, if I just web them, I can web them to the wall if I web them fast enough. Like I have to remember that these skills exist.
Totally. Were you gonna share, Matt?
I was going to say that, like, yeah, like I feel like I learned to do that more in this one than I did in the first one. In the first one, I really neglected the gadgets and stuff. But in this one, I was like, yeah, let me throw out some of these hologram dummies and like let them get some of this work. Or like, let me do his other kind of, what does he have, like a web bomb in this one too?
Oh, that little detonator thing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The detonator. I love the detonator. I would do that all the time.
Or whatever. Yeah.
Yes. So I would do that stuff, but but mostly I'm like doing, just circle and triangle, and then when I see that, finisher pop up, I'm like, hell yes, let's do it.
Absolutely. As you were saying, Matt, I also feel the same way. I want to echo your feelings about utilizing more of my skill set in this one than the last. That still happened, as much as I felt like for me it was like getting another gear to work. But at the same time, this game presented me with several moments where I felt almost overwhelmed and then remembered that set was there. So it's almost like it like encourages you to expand how you're operating in the game. Which Will, as someone who, utilizes 100% of their skill set and brain capacity, did you feel like this game gave you those same opportunities to use that set, or how did you feel about it?
Yeah, it's the objectives that make me do it. I try to always get those objectives. So you get into a battle, I hit the R3 and see like, you got to use 10 swing kicks, you got to like web 5 guys to the wall or whatever, you got to like venom dash or... So I probably would just get into groove because all of his skills are so powerful. You don't need to expand.
Yes.
But also I played it twice through. And so my second time through, I would like, for the bigger battles, I would sort of go in and be like, I'm doing this one all stealth. Or I'm poking the dragon immediately and I'm going to just wake them all up and take them all on at once.
Cool.
Just for fun. So... Camouflage was probably the last bunch of skills for me to use in this game. I probably was, I didn't start using that until like maybe the last couple of battles that my first playthrough. But then my next time, it just kind of makes it easy. If you get overwhelmed, turn invisible.
Yeah.
And just like get out of the way and they all lose track of you instantly. I mean, it was fun, but Miles so outmatched these guys.
Yes.
It was weird. Actually, they were more aggressive than the PS4 game. Like they're constantly shooting at you. They're constantly on you. But because your powers are bigger, that it's still a net gain. You outmatch these guys more than Peter Parker did.
I appreciate that too, that they made the game a little more sharp as far as the enemies go, but they also gave you more of an ability to be even equipped to fight those things.
The boss battles were harder, I would say. Like I had to do those a couple times. Yeah. I remember in the first game not having too much trouble with the boss, a little bit, but I'd kind of get into a groove and be able to take out Rhino or Vulture or whatever. But this time Rhino shows up and Rhino wasted me a couple times before I got it going.
I think I lost at least once to start too. But that was nice. You're shaking the rust off. It's no big deal. Another thing I wanted to talk about in this game, and also if anybody has like a big topic they want to discuss.
I want to get into the emotional stuff. Like, what do we think about the story of Miles in this game? Miles and Finn.
Perfect. That's exactly where I was hoping to head. How do you all feel about
if you guys? I mean, I was very moved by the end of it. Like we were saying before, it's weird because Spider-Verse is the unfair comparison.
Yeah.
This game does not impact me like Spider-Verse did. But if I forget about Spider-Verse and I just enjoy this on its own terms, I loved it. And I was extremely affected by the final sequences with Miles and Finn. Like they got me good.
Man, look, I'm going to come off as such a hater and I apologize, but I think for me, what I struggled with Finn, which I think was really well acted by an actor that I admire. She's one of my favorite shows, The Leftovers. I just it felt like a lot of connection to a character that I'd never met before because, she kind of came in, and especially caring about her brother as well was really hard for me. I think the character that I really, really that really got me was when Prowler was that fight with Prowler. I felt so conflicted because I was just I kind of understand Prowler's point, and that fight for me was it felt like fighting with my dad. That argument really, really affected me in a way that I couldn't with Finn.
Is one of the ways that they really, I hate to keep comparing him to Peter, but it's sort of impossible not to because he's called Spider-Man. That they improve on the Spider-Man mythology is the existence of the fallen uncle who loves you and that you love.
Yes.
He comes to represent the dad and the uncle comparison are the two sides we all have. I could go this way, I could go this way.
Yeah.
And it's really primal. And I agree. The Prowler story was incredible.
I mean, I kept losing, in that fight sequence in I think you're underground in the train, and I was just why? And it's I'm really focused on what he's saying. I was trying to hear the things that he's arguing with you. I was I'm not paying attention. Just stop listening to him and just pay attention. But it's such this moving part of especially because you do that mission before where you're finding all the samples, and then you get to hear his story about
that was
why him and the dad
mission.
don't. And I was just why am I doing this side mission? But then when that fight happened, I was just ooh, it just all comes together and you really feel it.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, I felt more connected to Prowler, just as a story point, because the Finn stuff, I liked, but I gotta agree with Edgar that it wasn't my favorite stuff, especially not when compared to even the end of the other Spider-Man game. I thought because the fight on the side of the building at the end of the other Spider-Man game is so it's one of the coolest Spider-Man things I've seen. It's great. But
it's so beautiful and cinematic and
but the stuff that I think I just like his the thing that makes Miles really work for me is his conflict with being Spider-Man. He's so challenged by that, and then to have his uncle then being you should feel kind of bad about you shouldn't be doing this, sort of driving that point home for him a little bit, and then being I don't know, I don't think what you're doing is right either, but there's such interesting foils that I thought, and I love the non-Spider-Man parts more than I liked in the other ones. In the other one, I didn't necessarily care for the plainclothes Peter missions or the Mary Jane missions, but the Miles story stuff where he's having dinner with his family. I was I love this. This is so cool. And I don't know, Edgar, you were talking about just he's a black kid in New York, and that's such an emotional thing for you. But when his mom would say Puerto Rican slang to him, I would get choked up. I'm getting teary eyed thinking about it. It's such an important, cool thing, such a cool part of that Spider-Man. I love that, and just seeing Puerto Rican flags in his room and stuff. I was this fucking rules. I love this.
Totally. I feel Matt, I don't know how you feel about this, but I've heard this from other discussion about the game from people who who identify way more closely to Miles or are literally from Puerto Rican descent. For you, did it feel from them? It sounded like it felt very authentic, and that was something that made a difference to them. I don't know if that was the same feeling that you had.
It was. I don't know. To me, it's because I've always loved Spider-Man.
Yeah.
So when Miles debuted in 2011, I think as a character.
No, it was earlier than that. It was 2007. Or I'll look.
2007. Okay. Because I was excited just to I don't know, to have a different Spider-Man. I was we've heard, because I think around the time that was true to Donald Glover was trying to.
You're right. 2011.
2011.
The Donald for Spider-Man campaign.
Yeah, because he's made the point several times. If you heard about a kid, just like if those books didn't have pictures, they were just words, and you heard about this kid who lived in New York with his grandparents whose parents were killed, you would think, if you thought he was a white kid, you would be insane. Like that's like just like that's insane to think about. But like I don't know, so like just to see that they were honoring, like, you know, or just giving a different perspective alone. Yeah. And like his family life is different than Peter Parker's. Like he has like a great, I mean, his parents are, you know, his dad's not alive, but like his mom's alive, and he's like he has, I don't know, he's just like
No, that's what made him different Spider-Man. Is that his dad wasn't in the picture. You're 100% correct.
You know what I mean? And so like, no, that's
You're
not what I'm saying.
with
But like,
me. Yeah,
he was in it, but like, it's just like such an interesting, like, I don't know. I'm just more like, at this point, if they only made Miles things, I'd be like more stoked on that, because I just think he's a better character.
Yeah,
I've seen enough Peter Parker things. I think there are 3 movie franchises with him in it.
Yeah. So many Peter Parker movies.
It's fun. Spider-Man PS4 was the first big story game I played. Then I played all those games I mentioned before, and now I play Miles. And so, first PS4 blew me away just because I was being blown away by like the modern era of video games. Just like having main quests and side quests and accumulating skills while also hearing well-acted characters do cutscenes was just like a combination I had not experienced, right? So I was maximally blown away by PS4, and it holds up. It's a great game. But now I played all 3 Arkham games. I'm like, oh, that's where they got a lot of the mechanics. I played Red Dead Redemption. I'm like, oh, okay, these are kind of more realistic, more gritty, emotional scenarios. Then I play Last of Us Part 2. I'm like, oh, this is like insanely deep, tough feelings.
Yeah.
Now I come back to Miles, and I'm like, okay, this game is not trying to be the maximum emotionally affecting thing. It's not trying to be the most punishing, challenging set of battle mechanics. What I think Spider-Man is good at is it's kind of like, it's like an OCD guy made this game. It is really, really good at giving you a lay of the land and what's left. You are never in doubt as to what you have left to do and what is next. Whereas in Red Dead Redemption, I'd be like, what am I even supposed to do? There's like so much going on.
Yeah.
Or like Last of Us, there's like, it's so linear that there's no options really. But Spider-Man is supposed to be like, okay, Miles Morales, you have an app. Your character can go to the app, and there's a neat little checklist of what you have left to do. And you can even see how many of the sub-objectives you've done. I'm like, this is like an OCD paradise.
I agree, but I almost felt like that's kind of like what pointed out to me that big flaw of like how little there was how quickly I got through that checklist. Like it almost was, I was just like, I'm done. Like I loved it. And I guess I wanted it to more so be like constantly updating and constantly adding things to it, but perhaps that would like stress out an OCD person if like they were just like, God damn it, this is a never ending list of things to accomplish. But that's what I want. I was just like, just constantly people being like, hey, I just saw a guy robbing the store, or hey, I just saw someone, and it's just constantly, I don't know. But I understand, that it was, during COVID, they wanted it for the PlayStation 5 release. So perhaps maybe this will be a game kind of like a Red Dead where we'll constantly get DLC and you can expand from there. But I don't know.
I think they did do a good job of the performances and like the cutscenes. Like they were performed well. I didn't, I tried to play Avengers, which has really good voice talent and pretty fun battle mechanics. But I think they just didn't polish that story enough. It like just didn't grab me. It wasn't like bad. I just was kind of like, there's no depth to it. This had it. Like Miles had it. Like they might have skimped on general scope. They might have skimped on the polish of the glitches, but I think they made the right priorities because I felt like I went through a story. It was a short story, but I went through one, and I did not feel like I was just clicking buttons to like knock over a million bad guys and be done. It was like way more emotional than like the early Uncharted's as a comparison.
True.
I was even just thinking about the things that you see happening on screen too are just like so nuts. Like even in that first Rhino fight where like Rhino is like he crashes into that building and like Peter's on his tail and just like you see like the front of a building like collapse.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is just so I can't believe what I'm seeing. Like this is like I loved it. I don't know. I do want to just like get back into it because like there are plenty of things that I didn't get to finish in this game, but I also am like I like to get back in the story also.
I wanted more Haley. Was that the deaf muralist?
Yes, definitely.
Yes.
I wanted more Haley. I thought she was in brief appearances. I was just like, what is this girl's story? This is like
right.
Very intriguing. And she right away was talking trash to Spider-Man in a way that I thought was funny. She
had
says,
like a flirty
"Don't die."
vibe.
Yeah, flirty
for
vibe
sure.
right away. I think they were trying to set up Spidey and Dana cast as a romantic couple, but I was like, no, sorry. It's Miles and Haley. Is what's happening.
He already knows ASL. Like, come on.
Yeah, it felt like there in The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, there's like 4 girls that thirst after Link, and I thought of that too, because I was like, oh, everybody wants to be with Miles in this game. He's just so magnetic. On the subject of the scope and stuff, what they did have, I felt for me making my journey through this game was for what the game was actually spaced out really well, and I found even an easier time in this game going and doing a few side things, doing one of the fighting some bad guys, going to get a few collectibles, maybe even doing one of like the challenges that Peter sets up before he leaves. Doing those things and then doing a story thing, I felt like was probably my favorite game as far as that balance. I think it was easier because it's like an 18-hour game, but I still was like so satisfied in that way. It was like not too much and too little. It was perfect for what it was.
There was a good grind ratio because I replayed the original game like 7 times, which is, that's a problem. That's a record that I think. Have. But like there's a lot of grinding. You have to like beat like something like 20 different crime battles in each district of the city in order to finish. And it's extremely repetitive. Although the mechanics are fun, fighting is fun. It's like too much the same thing. They really fixed that in this game.
Yes.
Like relative to its size, there's like enough grinding that you feel like, you get to fight, you get to do some stuff, but I don't know. It's not like if I had to do another 30 fights in order to finish it and they were just fights, I'd be like bummed. Yeah, I could use more story. But just like mechanical tasks, I thought they had a good ratio in this one, better than the PS4.
Felt the exact same way, and from pretty much the jump, that's exactly how I felt. There are another thing I sort of wanted to discuss was the big set pieces that they had. I'm pretty sure there's less than in the last game, but were there any big fights or big battles that obviously the final one is really impactful, and maybe we could just start with that.
The war in Harlem, when you have to like clear out like a bunch of blocks before you get to Finn, is massive.
That was pretty great.
Yeah. And it feels like the city's going up in flames. Like you are barely holding it together, and it goes on for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they made that so personal because it's happening in your home. It's
His
your
mom is nearby,
neighborhood.
Finn's nearby, Genki's nearby.
That was definitely one of my favorite parts because it just did feel like his, oh shit, I have to be I have to be Spider-Man now. Like I have to do this.
Yes.
I have to protect my city, my home.
Absolutely.
I also liked Rhino in the wherever they were keeping all that. What was that material called?
Oh, yes. You and Finn are on that mission together.
Yeah, that was
the second
pretty,
Rhino fight.
Yeah, that one was
that was
pretty
extremely
great.
difficult.
Yeah, where you had to like realize you had to throw like the engines at him like that. Like I didn't realize that at first. I just kept dying. I was like, what's wrong? And I was like, oh, you got to throw these engines at him. That's the good stuff. And that was just like a really fun one. And like you said, working together with Finn felt really fun. Like it felt like those moments in movies where the characters are back to back and are like, all right, we got to do this. Like I had that feeling to it. That was something that I really enjoyed.
That's great. Any other moments?
Like things like that were just really well polished.
Yeah.
You know, I think they knew what to bear down on. Somebody was smart in terms of setting the priorities under a time crunch, I think. I love seeing Gloria again. She's the woman who runs Feast now.
Yeah.
And in the original game, you save her very early from being mugged, and you see her go from being kind of like homeless and lost or unhoused, or, you know, and like lost. And then she, by the end of the first one, is getting a job thanks to Aunt May helping her. And now she's kind of like got a girlfriend and she's running Feast and her eyes are brighter. And I kind of like that they continued that story.
That's really cool. As someone who knows these games probably as well as anybody will, was that the only example of that? Were there things that were carried from the first to the second? Could be story.
You bump into Peter Parker and Doc Ock in a flashback in this game. That was kind of fun.
Yes.
My gosh, let's talk about that.
I really want to talk about that. But I gotta bounce. There's a lot of kitchen stuff happening over here.
I heard some beeps over there. It was good to have you, Matt. What do you want people to know? What do you want to plug before you go?
Well, here's what I'll plug. I'm sorry to interrupt. Listen to Had This Get Played, where we talk about video games there, and then just listen to all the things that Connor's working on right now, because Connor's a good man and deserves your support.
Wow. Well, thank you. Well, hey, happy holidays to you, fella.
Yes, you too, and you. And thanks for doing the rest of you as well.
Bye, Matt.
All right, bye guys.
Matt.
It's historic. The first ever pre-end of the episode sign off that we've ever had. But
a big dog joke.
Dude,
like
he had to show us up in some way, and that's the Matt Apodaca guarantee. But I love that moment that you brought up, Will, very much near the end of the game.
Yeah.
Where you're going
right
to
before the final battle.
That it's a museum, right?
The Oscorp Science Center, where you and Finn won as teenagers, and now she has set up a base in. So Miles flashes back to their happy memory of breaking in to see their own technology in an exhibit.
Yes.
And you can see the seeds of Finn becoming sort of evil and rule breaking, but also see that you were friends and stuff.
Absolutely.
And there's a moment where you bump into Peter Parker and Octavius because he's working for him.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really fun when it happens. It's very quick. It's like maybe 10 seconds, if that. And it's pretty effective.
It's still a satisfying Easter egg.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Really cool. And you get to see Dr. Octavius pre-corruption, when he's still a good guy.
Yeah, it was really unexpected for me because to the best of my knowledge, I don't think they do that in any other part of the game where suddenly you're just in one of your flashbacks. So that to me was surprising and interesting, but also, I wanted to just follow around Doc Ock and Peter after that because they eventually go through an area you can't follow them. But I was like, what are they talking about? What's going on? Peter even at one point says something along the lines of he can't make something later, and because he's got Spidey duties or whatever.
Yeah.
Or he's got to go right there. Yeah, I thought that was particularly great.
Edgar, can I ask you something?
Please.
I feel like I interrupted you a little bit, so this might be a little redundant. But can you compare it? Because I was so excited, I talked in the middle of you saying it. Can you compare again your experience watching Spider-Verse and playing this game?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, mostly, what was so fascinating about Spider-Verse was, again, feeling seen and all of that, and how expansive that world was. And I understand that this game probably couldn't do that.
One examples of being seen you were saying was when his shoes are untied, and he's like, yeah, it's a choice. That's super early in the Spider-Verse movie. And
that's something that I mean, Connor knows this. I don't tie my shoelaces. I walk around with my shoelaces constantly untied, and I say it's a choice, but it comes from how long it took me to learn how to tie my shoelaces. I didn't learn until high school how to properly tie my shoelaces. Also don't know how to read clocks, but that just like that little character detail felt so full and fleshed out, and I felt like I was kind of missing some of that stuff. I mean, you do have the Puerto Rican slang, you do have, he knows how to dap people up. That's always a way to show that you don't have a black person in the movies, that they have a high five with someone. This game had that, but it just, I mean, one thing that like really, really pointed out to me was that his character moved to Harlem for no reason. That for me was just like red flag. Like, you guys are just, like you said, building on top of this game. You guys probably were like, man, we could build a whole new borough. Or he moved to Harlem. Like that to me was like a big, like, no, like he should live in his original neighborhood and have some of the authenticity of it. And like how that makes him a little different than Peter Parker, that he lives in the area that he lives in. Yeah. But
how important
I think that was
is
for me
it
the big difference.
How important is it to either of you guys? I'll throw this out to both you guys. And I get this more from the Spider-Verse movie, but it's in the game a little bit, where he goes to Brooklyn Visions High School and he leaves behind. He gets into like a sort of higher tier high school and has to leave behind his friends. And that's kind of like, I mean, the best metaphor I know for this is an Australian saying, which is tall poppy syndrome, which is the tall poppy is the one that's going to get cut down by the mower.
Right.
So you don't want to be a tall poppy. You almost don't want to succeed in an obvious way. And it's a metaphor for kind of a fear of success and a kind of fear of having faith in yourself. And I feel like that's part of Miles' story also, is he's a little bit ashamed to be going, either maybe not ashamed, but like it's a problem that he's going to Brooklyn Visions. He doesn't know how to wrestle with that.
I mean, it's this idea of being like, that successful kid from your neighborhood and the pressures that come with that, especially when you consider like, the fact that he's black. Like, I do feel like some of that was kind of missing from this game, but I think like that maybe the game wasn't about that. But I like that about Miles. I like that because it feels so real to, someone who also went to private school, and like the other neighborhood kids were like, why don't you go to Yonkers High? Like, or Yonkers, not Yonkers Middle School or Dotson Middle School. Like, why aren't you doing any of that stuff? Why do you go to this weird private school that you have to wear a uniform for? There's sort of a shame to it, even though that's a good thing, or maybe it's not. I don't know. But I definitely did miss a lot of that from this game.
Yeah. The one thing that I think did kind of work for me in that sort of area was that even though it's very minimal, if it pops up, it might just be his personality, but how he's so apprehensive to take on not apprehensive, but maybe apprehensive is a good word, to take on this role of I am Spider-Man. He's like,
that's the arc of the story is, are you ready? Can you do it?
So I think for me, the few times that did show up, what you were talking about, Will, in the story, it did align, but it more to me seems like it showed up in just his personality and interactions, as opposed to like explicitly feeling that sort of outward shame. I don't remember.
I thought they did a good job with that story. There's one part where Peter Parker, after the initial big battle on the bridge, where the bridge is basically demolished.
Yes.
Right? you're coming home to New York if you're Spider-Man's guardian. So how do they justify Peter Parker not coming home when the Brooklyn Bridge is destroyed? Yeah. Well, he calls Miles, and Miles is like, I got it. You don't have to come back. And Peter's like, well, call me and I'm coming back. Yes. And that is the first moment where Miles is like, I don't need you to come save me. I'm going to take care of it. And they had a couple of moments like that. Yeah, it wasn't like underlined a ton, but I felt it. I felt it when it was there. And I absolutely. There was a big climactic moment where he says, I am Spider-Man. And man, it got me good.
Yeah.
Why won't you give up? Why won't you give up? Why don't you stop? And he's like, because I'm Spider-Man. And I love it. I mean, I almost cheered like when he did that.
Was that a fight against Uncle Aaron?
Finn. No, it's a fight
against Finn. Finn?
Okay. That's fantastic. Yeah, speaking of that, Will, there were several times in this game where I sort of like erupted with like emotion and excitement or joy for Miles or for just what's happening in the game. That was one of them. And it's cliche because I feel like this is what we heard about this is so much of what's been written and said about the first game. But the moment that transitions you from movie to actually swinging a Spider-Man in both of those games is fantastic. But this one, as soon as it happened, I was I think part of it was playing on the PS5 and it looks so beautiful. I was just like, I kind of let out a yell of just joy. I was like, oh my God, I'm fucking Spider-Man again. This is incredible.
One of my favorite moments in this game is in the final battle where he absorbs all the energy from the Big Daddy reactor that's going to blow up Harlem.
Yes.
And of course, I know a happy ending is imminent. He's going to win. But I was like, I was immersed in the moment. If he's like, he could die from doing this. He doesn't know. He's willing to explode and kill himself to save everybody. And I was like, this is badass. This is Marvel superhero in the best. You just do it. You don't worry about risking your life. I mean, I was completely swept up in that last battle.
Totally.
And when Finn like flies him up into the sky to protect everybody, it got me. It got me good.
Same here.
And then he explodes, and they do like it's a little spider web looking like sun flare when his electricity explodes off of him. But I was like, that was good, man. That was like, it was solid.
Yeah.
It might be kind of medium sized, but I don't know. They did it right. That's a respectable game.
Take it from me. Some people love to be medium sized, and I'll leave the comment there. Edgar, did you have moments in this game too that also, because this is a similar thing that I felt in the first It's a Way, they're similar, of just like a joy or excitement of like just being Spider-Man and moving around the city and swinging on your webs?
The first opening moment, actually, when he's walking through the city and he's wearing his Timbs and his, a jacket with a little bit of fur on it. That to me, I was just like, this is fucking sick. Like that to me was just like, holy shit, we have a black Spider-Man. And that was very, very exciting. And like, maybe it's cheesy, but I was just like, hell, like I just wanted him to be wearing like a Yankees fitted. Like that's like the only extra detail that I would have been like, hell fucking yes.
That's in the DLC, I've heard.
I'm excited for it. That for me was like a big moment of that.
That's fantastic. I love that so much. And yeah, just I think so much about this game, which was a similar thing. I feel like everything I loved about the first game, the feelings from the first game were present here and for the most part amplified, which is kind of what we've shared throughout this. Everything the first one did well, albeit as in a more bite-sized package. In this one, I felt like it just improved on everything for me for the most part, including just swinging around and being Spider-Man. I know it's like it's easy thing to say, but
this game had been the first DLC, it would have elevated the Spider-Man game into immortal status.
Yeah,
right. Absolutely.
Like if they were like, "Here's the DLC, it's Miles," you'd be like, "Holy shit, this is your
lose
DLC,
your fucking shit.
Dude."
Yeah.
Oh, it would be like legendary. I mean, that would probably be impossible schedule-wise, but
yeah,
it. I mean, I guess it left me wanting more, and that is a compliment.
Absolutely.
I'm looking forward to the next Insomniac game. I'll say that for sure. They make good shit.
They do. Well, I don't know off the top of my head. What do they do besides Spider-Man right now?
I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's.
I never know that stuff.
That's a Google later for me. But wow, we've got to talk about so much about this game that makes it fantastic. The only other thing that I really wanted to share, and if there's anything else that you all would like to share about, I'm going to leave space to do that. And if it's nothing, that's fine. But another little touch to this game that I thought was so special, a detail I didn't want to forget about, was after you beat the game or you beat the main story, your mom, Rio, shares with you, I believe it's her who does this, shares with you that your dad has left you these like 8 or so postcards around the city.
Oh my God, that was really great.
It was so touching because not only does he leave you postcards at these like these important places to him or from his life, sometimes I think there's a connection between you and him, but he leaves a little audio clip in a USB. So I just kind of
dead dad's voice. I forgot about that. That was a really lovely epilogue. My mom died when I was 16, and if somebody said, "Oh, here's 12 recordings of her," I'd be like, "What?" I mean, it would be the most precious thing anybody ever gave me.
Yeah. Wow.
So I was like, that was good. I mean, it was good.
Totally. What did you like those? Did you collect those, Edgar?
I didn't know about the postcards. Now I'm just like, I got to go back to this game. Like, I don't remember that detail.
Yeah, it's definitely
the very final. It's the very final like epilogue side quest.
Damn.
Yeah,
Guys, I have a bad habit. Once I hit the credits, I just switch to
credits
NBA
on the
2K.
game for you.
There's two short little missions, and they're both real. You could do them in half an hour, and they're worth your time. You'll like them. A bodega guy who named his cat after the original Spider-Man has come around to you, and there's a mission with him, very, very short, and then this scavenger hunt with your dad's recordings. It's kind of a parallel to the sound sample side quest, but it's not nearly as long. It's like you zip around the city once and you've done it. But I'm like, damn, it's good.
Totally. 100%.
You're listening to your dad. You have matured into a protector of the city like him, and you're listening to his hopes and dreams for you. It's pretty rad.
That sounds very, very beautiful. I mean, I now that I have it on PlayStation 5, I would like to play it again and just like see that.
I like you got that flex in there. I like that you got that.
You got to throw it in, Will. You got to throw it in every now and then. I got to look. You don't understand how fucking hard I worked for this PlayStation 5. I'm gonna talk about it all the time.
Perfect. Well, so that was sort of like the last thing I wanted to share. Did you, either of you, either A, have something you didn't get to share about, or B, want to wrap up your thoughts about this game before we do some plugs and get out of here?
For all its flaws, I'm glad it exists, and I had a great time. And I'm looking forward to people building on it in the future.
Awesome.
I definitely took the role of the naysayer on this podcast, but I do think that it is a very fantastic game. I mean, I really, really enjoyed playing it. Playing it in 60 frames per second also was just like, holy shit, this game was very, very beautiful. I want more. Like, next one, don't make it about Peter Parker. That would be my request is let's do another Miles Morales game because this game was so great.
Yes, I've had the same thought as like it will be strange when they follow this up with the Peter game after getting a better Spider-Man with Miles. But hey, you know what, Edgar, you're also the naysayer in all areas, so you fit the role, and thank you for playing that today.
Look, you need it, or else it'll just be 2 hours of people just loving the shit out of this game. You need someone to be like, wait,
It's true.
It kind of sucks sometimes too.
Hey, well, thank you for doing that, and thank you too for sharing, and of course you, Matt, he who is not here any longer. But that'll bring us to the end of the show. So thank you two so much for joining me for this very special holiday bonus Call Me by Your Game co-op episode. This was really, really fun. Well, let's do some plugs before we go. First, let's start with you, Will, and also thank you again for being here. You're
my pleasure.
First timer, but I'd love to have you back on my show to do a one-on-one to talk about any of the games you love. But what do you want to share with us? Where should we find you?
I have a podcast I do with my brother. It's called Screw It, where it's going to talk about comics. Me and my brother Kevin do it. Normally it's the two of us, but we're gonna do a season where we have guests on. So maybe if you guys are into comics, we can get you guys on. But we just talk about comics we loved as a kid. So screw it. We're just gonna talk about comics, and we did a whole season on Spider-Man, the original Spider-Man comics from the 60s.
Oh wow,
so if you're that sounds kind amazing. Of dork, you'll like it.
Awesome. Yeah. I'll leave show notes to anything you all want to plug. Do you want to plug your Twitter where you're really successful?
My Twitter is WILLHINES. It's all fake brags and total lies, and I recommend it.
One of my favorite bits by far.
It is really great, especially this year. It's even funnier. I love it so much. Well, thank you for being here, Will. This was so much fun to have you. And then, Mr. Momplaisir, what do you want to plug? What should people look out for?
I mean, I find myself in this awkward position where I no longer have a podcast to plug. Just follow me at Edgar Momplaisir on Twitter, at Awfulgram on Instagram.
Killer. Great. And thank you again for being here, buddy. Thank you for returning. That was very brave of you to come back, after your what I would consider a successful show, but you would consider not so.
Look, again, if you guys go back and listen to it, you can hear Connor and I realize how boring Jak and Daxter is as we're playing it. It's like a live thing where you go, Connor just goes, it's kind of just a collect-em game. And I'm like, yeah, it kind of is. And we're just bored. But I'm very happy to be back on to talk about a really great game.
Awesome. That was back when we did video companions. So we played it for a half hour and then we talked about it when you could be in person with someone.
That's correct.
Well, great. Well, thank you again. And I'll go ahead and close us out with some plugs as well. Our cover art is done by @glenn.j on Instagram. They have incredible work. You should check them out. The show is produced by Jeremy Schmidt. You should check out his show, Video Games, a comedy show. If you listen to this podcast, you probably already know about his, but it's a part of the Super NPC Patreon network that we do here. So again, this is normally just a Patreon exclusive, so check us out at patreon.com/supernpcradio. I'm on Twitter at Connor_McCabe, and sometimes I stream video games. Sometimes I do that at Cons is Cool 69 on Twitch. That'll do it for this episode. Happy holidays, everyone.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays. Be safe. Take care. We'll see you on the next one.